What's up, family? Oh my gosh, Rasati out here in Singapore. Thank you so much for joining me on the Night Owl podcast. And you know what? Today I got to watch a little piece of history come back alive. I can't believe that I had a chance to sit down and watch the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunion. You guys, oh my gosh, they haven't really aged all that much. And I finally got a chance to listen into why things changed in the cast itself. And I had no idea, but it was cathartic and it was so touching, and God, it was beautiful to watch and reminisce and really listen to the lessons that they learned on set working together for all those years. And I got a chance to watch in and just have them talk about their actual experiences outside of all of the scripting and the acting, right? So how did they go on about their lives behind the screens? How did they open their shows? I had no idea that as a live show, they were able to open it up almost like a concert every time. It was beautiful. Gosh, I cried. I watched it twice. I cried. But yeah, it was gorgeous, and it also reminded me of my own childhood. Like a lot of what I was able to heal from as I was growing up came from the movies. My first therapist, my first counselor, my first best friend was TV. I mean, TV raised me. It was my therapy. It was my family, my company. It was the one place where I could find people who lived like me or understood some of my feelings, and I could watch what they would do differently because I wasn't able to experiment with my life. I wasn't in a position at all to kind of negotiate with my mom or find different ways to do things. I had to adhere by the rules, obey, do as I was told, be seen and not heard, all that lovely stuff. But to be honest, TV raised me. Watching, oh gosh, where to begin? Where did I start watching? Gosh, I had to watch the Power Rangers a lot, but that has nothing to do with anything. Watched Family Matters, watched Growing Pains, watched Step by Step, watched Full House, watched, God, I was obsessed with Seven Heaven for a long time, and I loved it because there was such a spiritual aspect to it. And yes, they were Christian, but they were very open-minded, and I appreciated all of that. Like, there was so much to watch, and so many different families, and so many different scenarios, and I slowly learned that mine wasn't the only way to live. I grew up in this bubble thinking, my family was perfect. It was the perfect family. It was a perfect way to grow up, and it was just great, right? And then when I started getting in trouble, I realized, okay, bubble burst, not so perfect. And when I started telling people about the things that happened inside my home, which obviously was big taboo. Back then I was told, what happens within these four walls stays within these four walls. You are not to discuss our family life outside with anyone because they won't understand. So when I did, because I was just conflicted and really upset, and I couldn't understand why I was angry all the time. So when I talked to my friends and they told me, hey, that's not the way we do things in our house. And for the first time I realized that white families, the kids were able to talk back to the parents, and the parents actually listened to what they had to say and tried to find a way around things. And I was thinking, wow, okay, that's really progressive. That's never going to happen in my family. But I realized just how wrong I was about thinking that this was normal. Being beaten was normal. Being yelled at the way that I was yelled at was normal. Being compared to everybody was normal. But normal didn't necessarily mean it was good. And when I realized that other families did it differently, I started learning that perhaps my parents only knew one way. Perhaps because they weren't offered the ability to live outside of their culture until they were grown adults, that they didn't know that there were other ways to do things. Perhaps because they always stuck around with their own community. No matter where we moved, we were always in a Sri Lankan community populated by people we knew or friends, that became like family after a while because they shared that same civil war history from Sri Lanka that we did, and there was a camaraderie there. There was a community there. So when I went to the US for the first time and I lived in an ashram, which I was very grateful for, and I lived with my aunt and my grandmother and my mom and my brothers and everything, we had our small knit family, but we also were shuttled off to school an hour away in what used to be a segregated school, now newly privatized, right? And I had a chance to really take in how other people live their lives. I really had a chance to get to know how Caucasian people lived at home and how African American people lived at home. And I realized that we had so much more in common with African American families than we did with Caucasian families. Like, They get ass whippings too. They get told off and compared to all of their cousins too. There was a lot of similarities, and perhaps that's why I fell in love with African American culture in the first place. But to be honest, if it wasn't for the ability to watch all of these TV shows, until I had the opportunity to actually interact with people face to face who were outside of my culture, that could give me some insight into how things were done in their homes and the kinds of things that they suffered through as they were growing up, I would have no idea what was right and what wasn't right, what was possible and what wasn't possible. And I don't think I would have pursued psychology as hard as I did. Because the more I knew, the more confused I was, the more questions I had, and the more I wanted to understand why things were being done the way that they were. Why do people behave the way that they do? If they are brought up with so much privilege and they're not beaten up and they're not told off and they're not really bullied, why do they tend to get so upset over the slightest of things? Why is it they don't bounce back from change as easy? Why do some things matter more to some people than they do to others? And I didn't understand. And it wasn't until I started digging into the psyche of each individual character as I watched these movies that I started to understand it depends on what they've been through. Because every new experience is being measured against something they've lived through. And if they've never lived through chaos before, like we've lived through chaos, it's going to seem monumental to them. But another couple of times and they'll be like, this is old hat. I've been through this already. I know what to do now. So for all intents and purposes, TV was my guiding light. The stories I watched, the ability to see into someone's family and understand why each of the characters reacted the way that they did, the way they pushed their boundaries, the way they fought for their freedoms, the way they tried to establish boundaries or were afraid to establish boundaries. I saw into all of that. I felt all of that. And the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, as much as they educated us on the richness of their culture, they really showed us how it was to grow up and how important it was for people to be able to lead the way for the generation coming up behind them. And so, gosh, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunion was just amazing and beautiful and so heartfelt. And it was so reminiscent of a time in my life when I first started watching it and all the things that I went through back then. Looking now back at those kinds of difficulties, I'm like, damn, I went through a lot and I survived a lot. And it was because I got hope from all of these stories, from all of these characters and their various interactions and struggles. And I couldn't be more grateful. When I didn't have someone I could look up to and I didn't have someone physical that I could go ask for help, I had TV. I had my favorite families that I could just listen into and see what they did and trial and error my way through it based on what I'd learned from them. And it helped in a lot of ways. It gave me hope in so many ways. And I don't know if I could ever express it quite the way I want to, but yeah, TV got me through a lot. Sitcoms, movies, all of it. And I am grateful that I was aware enough to be able to sit and observe and really listen and take in and understand what was relevant and what wasn't, what was comedic effect and what was really important to listen to and understand. And it was just a flood of memories to watch that today. It was amazing. So for those of you who haven't yet, I hope you do get a chance to sit down and watch it. And yeah, I definitely did watch it twice and cried both times. And chances are there'll be another episode about something to do with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But it was beautiful. It was a good reminder that I found a way when I didn't think I had anyone to reach out to. And maybe that's your way too. There's no right or wrong way to do it as long as you find a way to manage, a way to cope that's healthy for you, that doesn't hurt you, doesn't hurt anyone along the way. It gives you what you need to get through the day. That's all you really need. That's all I needed. I needed somewhere that I could sit quietly and observe and put my problems aside and maybe look for hope and inspiration in someone else's problems so I could figure out what to do next. And it was amazing that way. Such a journey. So thank you to Will Smith and family for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and the reunion, because that was definitely a different side to see, and it was just, gosh, it was beautiful. Yep. I don't know what else to say. Y'all got comments, let me know. In the meantime, do go check it out. It was beautiful. Really beautiful. Bye.